Readings today, we are reminded that the world that we live in is important, but fleeting. What exists now is a shadow of what is to come. We live in a world of sin and darkness, of self-preservation and selfishness. It concentrates of the individual for the greater good, but which ultimately causes suffering to both. This paradox has been on display this week in the international climate talks in Egypt. All of the delegations from nations around the world, and even those who refuse to attend, acknowledge that if we do nothing, sea levels will rise to catastrophic levels, and simultaneously, large portions of the world that we look to for cropland will become barren. Already, the Mississippi Valley is experiencing drought, as is the Southwest, including the Imperial Valley, where many of our fruit and vegetables are grown. And large swaths of Africa, too, face drought. Florida, Louisiana, and Puerto Rico, and many Pacific and Atlantic island nations are experiencing repeated flooding and hurricane events, which is making what was once desirable waterfront land worthless. Governments are collapsing due to the chaos of climate events, and people are being forced from lands their ancestors have lived on for centuries, and in some cases, even millennia. The search for food, shelter, and work to sustain themselves and their families has created a worldwide migrant crisis, even greater than that which followed World War II. And yet, at the climate talks, and even more so when delegates go home to the countries that they represent, no country, no one is willing to go first in moving towards decarbonization because it will harm their economy in the short term. Even as we all know that we are destroying our common home, and as the impacts of climate change are being felt in real time, no one wants to sacrifice their own better good for the good of humanity and our world as a whole. We all look at the financial and personal costs to reduce carbon, and especially methane emissions, and see the world as too intractable to deal with, and go on with our lives. Promises that no country is realistically likely to fulfill might be made, but we are all collectively hurtling towards an existential crisis, while each nation and individual within those nations concentrate on their own personal needs and wants. Rather than reducing carbon, we are incrementally increasing our usage and hoping that someone else does something to reduce worldwide usage. After all, each of us has more pressing needs, like trying to get through this week, taking care of our families, making that trip that we have been longing to make, ensuring that our wardrobes are not dated or filled with clothes that no longer fit, eating that meal that we have been longing to try, and getting that present that our loved ones have been waiting for. And I do mean that on a personal level. I too am guilty of wanting to buy new things, of eating foods, including from animals that I know are being hunted at unsustainable levels, or whose ecosystems are crashing, or whose farming or manufacture is causing the increase in climate change, and of driving a personal vehicle or flying for convenience when I know there are other choices I could be making that would ensure the greater sustainability of our world and a future for my sons and their children. I try to make better choices, but it can be exhausting. And there is always that voice that says, well, someone else is making worse choices than I am and causing more damage. Or I am just one person. Nothing I do can truly change anything. And it is this thought that we are warned against in our gospel and second reading. In the gospel, we are told that this world is going to come to ruin. The nations will turn on nation. But throughout, we must continue to testify to the truth, to love. And in the second reading, we are warned that those who are unwilling to work, those who are simply willing to sit back and watch the world burn and wait for salvation, should not eat, a phrase that has multiple levels of meanings, especially within the Pauline community. First, there is the superficial, that those who present themselves merely to be dependent upon the community while they await the world to come should not be rewarded with the community laboring to keep them alive and in comfort. But also there is a second level, that if someone is not working to build up the communion of the faithful, they should not be sharing in the communion of the Eucharist. And finally, there is a deeper meaning, that if someone is not willing to work towards the creation of heaven on earth in this life, they will not see the reward of heaven in the world to come, in that life to come. As much as we are looking to that world that Isaiah envisions, a world in which we all will be able to live out our lives in peace, a world in which predators, human and animal alike, will be transformed or face destruction, we are challenged to continue to always work together to build that world today and not give into the temptation of resignation or powerlessness, to turn to laziness and surrender in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. We are called upon to be the light in the darkness, building the kingdom of love in the here and now, and preparing the way for the kingdom to come. Amen.